Alrighty, hey, and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Blueprint. We are so excited to have Jack Thompson with us today. Jack has over 30 years experience in producing and planning large-scale events, everything from trade shows to company events, and he has a very unique insight as far as what he plans and how he structures these events from the beginning. So planning, weeks and oftentimes months and sometimes even years before an event, and really figuring out what that messaging and what that messaging framework is going to be for getting, really the ideal eyeballs and the ideal target market. With that, Jack, can you share a little bit about maybe just an overall view of what you've done as far as actually planning these events? And then, of course, we'll chat through like how you actually do that and some takeaways for our listeners. Does that work?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Brandon. I think what the main thing that we were chatting a little bit about and what I wanted to share with the listeners was that in planning and promoting an event or marketing an event, recognizing and at most events the audience is, how do I say this? I guess the audience is there's different groups of people within the audience. So when you're planning, for instance, and I'm going to use some just real examples. I worked on a pet supplies trade show and conference for a number of years, and our goal was to get as many qualified attendees to come to this event. And those attendees were different. The primary attendees were pet shop owners, but there were also veterinarians and there were also groomers, so people that groom dogs and cats and that sort of thing. So, and they're completely different businesses, right? There may be some relation to the pet stores as with the groomers, but believe me, it's a different breed of folks, no pun intended. So, anyways. What I'm getting to here is that when we were putting together the messaging that could be sent out, with email blasts or promoted via social media and on the website or whatever, we really need to have different marketing messages for those three audiences. So, again, why they should attend. The other example that I wanted to bring up, and it's somewhat the same, is I worked with a technology group, which was an IBM software users group. And so they had primarily a lot of programmers came to this particular event, but also other folks came too that were like more the consultant type of person or the IT person from the organization that was purchasing the software. So again, what we needed to do was create different messages, not in the same brochure too. So the brochures, whether they were electronic or they were in print, although they may have looked the same, had a lot of the same elements, in some key messaging areas, the message was different and it was definitely aimed at those different groups. So that was the one thing. I just think that it's important that those that are interested in the audiences that are listening, that most people are aware of that, but just in case they're not, and it's not that difficult to do. So, and it could go into like press releases and a lot of other things too. So.
Exactly. And I think, sort of one of the applications that, just in our brief conversations I've been taking away is, you're not trying to have one message fit everybody, and because you do oftentimes, basically if we're thinking with the end in mind, all of our actual attendees at these events, of course, we're just use trade show as the example because that's the series that we're in right now. But if we're using trade show as the example, we want our attendees to have, a positive, enjoyable time. So therefore, we're not just going to have, as you mentioned with your pet example, just pet food manufacturers. We, definitely want to have the vets in there as well, which will have different messaging, along with, different maybe supply companies that would, have totally different messaging as well. So if we begin with the idea, is why, again, I know it's a simple concept, but definitely everybody, listening, as you can apply this to your own projects, it's something that we don't necessarily think through all the time, that it's something that can really apply to narrowcasting a message, coming up with just slight tweaks and pivots through that core messaging that can really just help it be that much more of a positive experience for resonating with your clients.
Yes.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen some, just to kind of piggyback a little bit, I've seen some groups that will add kind of like some groups, they'll call it like a vertical market, or they'll add a track of a new subject matter, right, that they're going to include in their conferences. And so they really want to focus on that. So, again, what we're talking about here is, again, the different messages, right, for the different audiences. So you can really, as you create, more of a reason than ever to create like an individual, marketing message towards getting people to come to this new thing that's happening. And of course, you want to measure it. So you and I talked a little bit about in a prior discussion about the importance of, measurement and analytics and everything like that. So, but no, it's one of those things that makes common sense that when we all get busy, sometimes we forget to do. So if that makes.
Yeah. And laying that framework, right? It's, doing it in the beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe the next logical, aspect of this is, after you have that core messaging, it's not like, I go back to, I love your example of the pet industry trade show. It's not like the pet food manufacturers and the vets will necessarily be what we'll call like hanging out at the same places online. They're not going to be, able to be targeted or, displayed your messaging, your opportunity through the same platforms necessarily, or maybe the same platforms, different silo within it. So I guess the next application of this, and maybe this is where you might have another example of a success story. What you've seen is when you actually have this specific or this narrowcasted message, and the actual distribution of it. Of course, I'll share a little bit of how we can do it digitally wise, and things that you guys have probably already been implementing a little bit. But Jack, have you seen different ideas of how taking the same or this unique messaging and distributing it on specific platforms, specific channels to target the individuals that you're trying to market to?
Well, boy, if that isn't like handing me the handing me the intro into the how do you attract Gen Y? I don't know how else you would say it. But and selfishly for our listeners, Brandon and I had talked a little bit about this. I, as the father of a 17-year-old, at least in terms of social media, let's face it, those I guess it's Gen Z now. They're not on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. They use Instagram, which by the way is now called Insta. Don't say Instagram. That's like old fashioned. Snapchat, I think that's probably Snap too. Who knows? YouTube is huge. I mean, all these. So if an industry or an event wants to attract that age, that group, don't depend on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. It's not going to happen. They're never going to see the message, right? So the distribution, I think that's what you were asking me, is how do you get the messaging, especially if you differentiate it for different audiences. It could be the delivery methods or methodology or methods can be different for sure, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then as crazy as it sounds, and I know this is really a digital marketing, podcast, there are some instances where, and my old school is going to show through here, but that print might make some sense, Mm-hmm. So if you're sending a special VIP invitation type thing or what looks like a VIP, you might want to do it in a really nice, clever, again, die cut invitation, neat thing, and mail it to them, and you'll probably get a great response, And then you put a little, some kind of RSVP in it or whatever, or go to our site and RSVP or what have you. So I hope that answered the question. It seemed like it gave me the layup, but
I think sometimes, when we talk so much about, all these different tactics, whether it be, the remarketing or, just the display ads, and actually, trying to have these, hyper targeted to specific ages or what they're searching for or sites they visited, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes we get so down in the weeds of that I just love, Jack, it's a breath of fresh air really of, hey, here's some other more traditional tactics that can, potentially be coupled together with, different things that we're already doing online. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, awesome. Brandon, if you look at, and I know we're talking about B2B events, but if you're talking about B2C events, right? So business to consumer events, like for instance, the auto show or whatever it is, right? So they still primarily they're a perfect, I should say it this way, they're a perfect example of the blend of old and new. They still use television and radio ads. They still use print, although they also absolutely use, email and social media and drive people to their websites. And, the registration is all done online and everything, although you can still buy tickets to some of these things when you get there. So, I keep going back to maybe in it's the best of both worlds, So I don't think that old school stuff is just totally going to leave ever, frankly.
Yeah.
It'd be like in terms of event marketing.
Absolutely. Well, and that's awesome. So I know, my big takeaway here, and Jack, I'll ask you sort of, the one key message that you would love, if nothing else, if our listeners don't hear anything else about the entire episode, that one key takeaway you'd like. I mean, the one I'm taking away from this conversation is strictly along the lines of, no matter how much we think we know who we want to market to, we really just have to take that step back at the end of the day and really figure out, what's going to be that best user experience at the end of the day for, the attendees at an event, and how we're actually going to make that happen. So meaning that we narrowcast the message, figure out those, different clientele that we want to actually have at that event, and, really just taking that base messaging and customizing that a little bit to make it just seem that much more effective for that individual. So that's my big takeaway. Is there anything that you'd like to sort of roll this up as for our listeners?
Brandon, you did a great you did a great job. You stole some of my thunder, but I think that was a great way to say that. I think part of what you said about making it an experience, just a pleasurable, memorable experience for the event participants, right? So as the planner, if you will, or the marketing person or whatever, but as the event producer, if that, I can only speak from that side, you want to put yourself in the shoes of the attendee. And so you want to make this something that when they walk away, they're looking forward to, God, when's the next one of this? That was great. What a good event. I really learned a lot, or it was a lot of fun, or, whatever it was. So, I think that that's the goal. And how we do that, we want to look and say, how do we get that? How do we entice these people to come? So we need to get the right messaging and tell them what it's all about. And that can happen from a variety of different ways. And the messaging might be different for different groups.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Jack. Well, and thank you so much. Now, if our listeners want to stay in touch, where do you hang out most online? Because, of course, in the show notes down below, we'll have a link to probably your LinkedIn bio. But is there anywhere online that you frequent, or if anyone wants to stay in touch with you?
That's probably the best thing. It's Jack Thompson, CMP, CEM. I'm a certified meeting professional and certified in exhibition management. So, but they can find me at Jack Thompson, CMP, CEM, and just message me or connect, or request to connect, whatever. It's fine. Awesome. My phone number's there too. So be happy to chat with anybody about this kind of stuff. It's something I'm passionate about. So it's not work when you like it, right?
Hey, you hit the nail on the head there. So we appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jack. And guys, to tune in, listen to more, programs all around digital marketing, subscribe here. And, we'll really talk through all different aspects of, trade show marketing, online marketing, and really answer any questions you might have, bringing in experts much like Jack here. So Jack, again, thanks so much, and chat with everyone soon.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon.
like what you heard, head on over to thedigitalmarketingblueprint.com and download your own blueprint to begin mapping out your next online marketing program for your own organization. Again, I'm your host, Brandon Dietrich, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.